you sideways on my screen.
Yo, chill.
You're gonna see.
I'll see it. I'll see it.
Yo, what is cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? Sorry, I'm looking everywhere just because I kind of rearranged some things. So now my camera's up here. It was down below where it used to be. So I was just like, yo, but what is cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? Happy Friday. You have made it to another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace. And we're here. We're back for part 2 of Wakanda Forever. So, Grace, what is up?
It's been, like we talked off screen, it's been a wild week. As a continuation from last time, we talked about how like I'm basically like disabled right now because I don't have a working leg. I'm still in a boot. I'm still scooting around. Still on the crutches, all those things. And because life just doesn't stop, I don't think I've given my body the time to really rest. So it's a lot worse today. That's okay. That's okay. Oh, that's all right. Because you know why? Wakanda Forever, got to see it again on Friday. And what's in a week from now? Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special.
You were so excited. Like, I didn't even realize until, like, the story popped up today. And I was like, the Comic Cinematic Universe posted something today. Look at that. Let me see what's going on. Ah, the holiday special, of course, for sure.
So excited. So it's okay for all like the physical ailments I'm suffering. Marvel is compensating as always. So honestly, I'm doing pretty good, and I'm really excited actually that we split this into 2 parts because I feel like it gave me a lot of time to digest certain scenes, certain feelings that I think I had for the film, and where I feel like we can kind of talk about it, and also for us just to have the time to do that because I didn't want to rush when discussing such a big like project, so I'm excited. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking to see if that one crew actually updated their ranking systems, because we are going to do that today, and they did. And it's kind of wild that like in totality there are like actually 30 films on this list. Like I didn't even think it to be that much, but we're going to get to that a little later. I gotta log in. But as far as where we left off I think at the top of Act 3, and let's say that's when
I feel like it really gets marked by when Shuri takes the heart-shaped herb. I feel like that's where it's like a really big turning point.
Yeah, then, I was gonna say when the Queen passed. I think so we're on the same area
for sure.
So can you kick us off while I get logged into this real quick? I'm listening. I'm sorry.
No, do your thing. So the last kind of scene we were discussing, this is like post Queen Ramonda's passing. Shuri is finally successful in creating a synthetic version of the heart-shaped herb using both the kind of baseline she had previously in the attempts with T'Challa, but now also from the bracelet that she got from Namor. And this has allowed her to really create it fully, and they're about to test it. Nakia's there, Shuri, and I think it's Riri is also there. And when she takes the heart-shaped herb, we take her into the ancestral plane, and she's expecting either T'Challa or her mom. She even like verbally says like mom as she's turning the corner, and she's so disappointed to see that the person sitting on the throne is actually Killmonger. And that's kind of like the scene we were discussing, and then we kind of close it off from there. So this is kind of a good place to start.
Is it weird that her trip to the ancestral plane, it didn't take her to the, let's call it a sacred tree to where all the panthers are. It took her to I guess the ancestral plane version of the throne room. Do you think that's kind of weird that it didn't go to the other place?
I don't think it's weird in that the ancestral plane that we see T'Challa go to, which is like the sacred tree. That's the place that he gets pulled into. So we see it multiple times in his film, right? Because we see him take the heart-shaped herb several times. But like, for example, Killmonger, he doesn't go there, right? He goes to his old apartment and he sees his father. So I don't think that the version of the ancestral plane that we saw T'Challa go to is like the standard. You know what I mean? I think
Mm-hmm.
it would differ from person to person. So I'm not surprised that it deviates from his. It would make sense that it's somewhere different. And it would also make sense for it to be in the room where something horrible happened. She kind of lost the last little piece of her family, you know? So it makes sense to me. It does.
So, say with everything said, I'm kind of thinking about not only just the theology of Black Panther, but even the theology of Moon Knight. To visit these planes, do you think the actual person has to die, even if it's temporarily? Because I feel
Um,
like when Shuri took this herb, I think she may have gone into cardiac arrest. Am I wrong? Like I feel like she may have flatlined, and then they were worried for a second.
I don't think she did, but I,
Oh,
I'm, I mean, I've seen this movie twice, so if I
okay.
missed it, that kind of sucks on me. But I don't think so. I know that they placed the beads on her chest in case she goes into cardiac arrest, but I
Okay.
don't think that she actually did. So no, it doesn't seem like you have to go into the ancestral I don't think it seems like you have to die to go into the ancestral plane.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like taking the heart shaped herb is just such a ritual thing that's where it takes you, and I think it's a big part of the passing of the mantle, you know. And you and obviously like what we see in Moon Knight, like that's full on resurrection, you know, because that's the what are the name what's the name for that version of like the
That
afterlife?
plane, I forgot what
I
the
forgot
that
what they called.
goddess mentioned.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was just kind of curious. And I think the last question, as far as these type of trips, do you know? Because now you've seen it twice. I've only seen it once. So do you remember if Namor said? Because that's the type of trip that they went on, like to turn blue. Yes or no? Did they like kind
I
of
don't think
pass
we saw
before?
something similar. I don't know if we did.
Well, we know
uh
that they didn't go, let's say, to a plane. That's like they took their herb and then they got gills and they went into the ocean
yeah.
basically. But
And like the in between stuff there is like they kind of knocked out. You know, like I feel like I
okay,
have a scene in my head where they're just laying all on like the grass. They wake up, they have the gills, they're blue, and they're all gasping for breath, and they go into the water.
mm-hmm.
So I guess you don't see enough to know if that was maybe a part of their process. But also keep in mind, it's like I think for Wakanda, the heart shaped herb is something that's very it's not for everyone. You know what I mean? It's so I don't want to say exclusive, but I can't think of a better word to use. But you know, it's only used for like the people of royalty, and only like for example, like you know, in order for Umbaku to be a contestant to become the Black Panther, he'd have to go through like the whole uh challenge of the throne and things like that, you know. So there's like an exclusivity to the heart-shaped herb that you don't see with that equal in the people from Talokan, right?
Mm-hmm.
They all took it, and that's how they became the society underwater. So
Sure.
I think there's a difference, and the thing that makes Namor stick out is the fact that he's a mutant, and he has a whole different kind of like genealogy when it comes to that.
Well, I don't want to go there just yet, like, cause I like kind of where this conversation is going, just simply for the fact that just with the herb, like we have the Wakandan herb and we have the Talokan herb, right? They're all descendants of vibranium. You know, one may have landed in Wakanda on land, and another landed in sea, and then they got their version of it. But they all have like similar characteristics. I just think that with those characteristics, yes, they're exclusive, quote unquote, to the Wakandans because it's there, but it leads me to question on what type of trips anybody else would have if taking any of these herbs. Like I know that like with the herb from the Talokan people, they're specifically going to get the gills. That was like the quote unquote effect, right? And then if you take the Wakandan herb, yes, you're going to become super, get that super strength, quote unquote, a super soldier. But I want to know, like, say, what type of trips others would take. Like, let's say, if anything, hypothetically, right? Tony Stark's daughter gets a heart-shaped herb and she takes it. Will she see Tony in the ancestral plane? You know, like it's those type of questions that kind of pop up in my mind.
I feel like I understand what you're asking a little bit better. And I feel like a lot of it depends on like the gods that led them to these things, right? Because I think that's what really differentiates these two things is that we get a like panther goddess that led these people to the heart-shaped herb. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that herb is very much synonymous with that like belief system, which is what the Wakandans really like bleed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at the people of Talokan, you know, it's their respective god, like the feathered serpent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That led them to their herb, right? That's also kind of all of both of these things are brought by like the vibranium, right? That's what they assume that there was most likely two, and it makes sense that one of them ended up in the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I feel like you have a point, though. I really do think that if anything, the people of Talokan also had some kind of an experience, but it's just something that we're not privy to. Like we didn't get to see that, you know. But I
Right.
feel it would make sense for them to have had something similar occur to them, you know, before they just woke up again and were now in this form and then, you know, left,
And
right?
it's interesting to where just because like on one side in Wakanda it's simply just one person taking the herb, where there was like a whole people, you know. So I was just kind of curious as far as how, though they didn't show it, I was just curious as far as what kind of experience did they experience before getting the gills and going into the water, you know. So I
Yeah.
think if anything, that could have been like, I'm not mad that they didn't explain it, but if maybe on the DVD we get some type of like bonus features and it's just like this is what really happened in between, you know, that would be pretty cool.
I mean, it's a curiosity. It's like you said, it's not like it's pivotal to the story. Like, it's not like it's lacking, but it's a question that makes sense for you to ask. Like, you know, and I feel like I have a couple of questions that kind of fall under a similar vein, but we'll get into it as we continue.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's such a fair question. And I feel like in the scenario that you kind of played out, like, let's just say Morgan Stark, yeah, I don't know why when I said Morgan Stark, I knew I was talking about Tony Stark's daughter, but in
Mm-hmm.
my head, I'm like, wait a minute, am I mixing this up with Game of Thrones? But let's just say Morgan Stark took the heart-shaped herb,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like it would be easy for you to say, like, yeah, she'd probably see, like, Tony, if not some other ancestor, but it would make sense for it to be her dad and maybe their like the ancestral plane that would make sense for them, because that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where it's a little funny, because when you look at Moon Knight and they explain it, it's like heaven is heaven for like kind of however you believe it to be, so it's almost like it encompasses all belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if, let's just say Morgan, I'm assuming she doesn't follow the same belief system as Wakanda, I wonder if she did take it, she'd be in an quote unquote ancestral plane, but that would align with her belief system. It's interesting.
It,
It's
it
just,
it
yeah.
is, and I think like just you saying that and like posing the question itself, it in my mind, I don't know why I feel like for some reason it comes full circle for me in terms of just this the Tony Stark story. Something we didn't get in Endgame, but we got in the bonus features is like what he saw when he snapped his fingers, and everybody got to see that Tony saw Morgan from the whatever plane that he was on. We don't even know what type of
What
plane
that
that
was.
was. We just assumed, oh, it's a Soul Stone, but we're just gonna. I think it's safe to say that some plane that hasn't been discovered yet or talked about yet, and it's like even though Morgan is still alive, that's what Tony saw. So say if by chance Morgan goes to another plane and it happens to be by the heart shaped herb, even though I know that's not gonna happen, I'm curious, just like would it be full circle? You know, her see her dad being that her dad saw her in whatever plane he was in.
I like what you're asking. And I love how deep we are in like in theories right now, because this is like a situation that would never happen, but we're like taking it super legit, guys. Like we want to flush it
Yeah,
out.
we're talking
But
about Wakanda forever, but we're on Morgan Stark right now.
it's
Whatever.
about everything, guys. It's all connected. It's a kinetic chain. But you know, in regards to like the place that you see these different characters go when they snap their fingers, right? When they use the whole gauntlet. I feel like this space isn't necessarily aligned with like an ancestral plane because, for example, Morgan obviously isn't passed away, so she wouldn't fall into that category. I think it's like a space that's created by, I mean, you're looking at the space, the reality, the power, the mind, the soul. It's bringing all of those powers to create something like this, like a space where even like Tony, obviously we're talking about deleted scene, but
Mm-hmm.
Tony could see an older version of her daughter that's real because of the power of the gauntlet that it can create that. You know what I mean? I think an ancestral plane wouldn't make sense because, like, just looking at the Morgan situation. And on that note, we never saw Hulk. Where the heck did he go? Did he
Mm-hmm.
see Natasha? Did we never get this scene?
We
Were we wrong?
that's something that we overlooked, obviously, because we're only talking about what Marvel gave us in deleted scenes,
Mm.
and they kind of played it like the statue in the ocean and just hope that we forget. And when it comes down to uh, just the plane of the snap, right? All I remember from Moon Knight, the hippopotamus said there are different planes, so there could be some unexplored planes that we know or that we don't know of, you know. So right now it's a question mark as far as where the snap takes you, and a question mark to where it took the Hulk. But if it brought Romanoff, that would be great. It would have been cool if they showed it. Quick shout out, we got Romulo Lerma. Is that a family member?
Yes, it is.
They said what's up.
Love it. I was gonna actually chime in a little bit because the thing is, like, you mentioned the hippopotamus in Moon Knight, and she does talk about how everyone's, and we're using ancestral plane just because that's the term we're using with Black Panther, but basically, like, everyone's afterlife is going to be different based on their belief systems. And I feel like the place that the stone takes you to just doesn't classify as one of those planes, but we also like know that pocket dimensions exist. Like, I feel like if anything, where these people, these characters go to are like a pocket dimension that the stones temporarily make that kind of facilitate this. I feel like that would make so much sense, and it kind of lives within the science of the MCU that we know. And on top of it too, like, we didn't get to see where Tony went, but we know that there is a deleted scene that confirms that it seems like everyone who snaps their fingers with the full power of the gauntlet goes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it would make more sense than not to assume that Hulk also went somewhere. And it would just make so much sense for it to be Natasha. Like, Natasha just passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it seems like it has to be someone that's dead in order for you to see them, but it would just make sense because they had a romance that was incomplete. We never really got to see that continue when he came back. Like, it was very much cut short. And you can tell by like their split moments in Infinity War, like there's still feelings there. You can tell by how angry he was after her death, like there's still feelings there. And now I feel robbed.
Okay.
And no one's asking these
Let
questions
me
on the internet.
let
The
me stop
MCU
you.
really thought
Let me
they
stop you
slipped.
because you've made 3 points. You made a big statement here. 3 points. First one I want to tackle just to say I don't disagree is yes, it could be a pocket dimension. I'm not mad at that at all. The second point, it would be just on the point of planes, like we're talking the hippo, and the hippo just is talking about the afterlife and their different planes or whatnot. But I can counter that with the fact that the Black Panther hasn't died to go to the ancestral plane, so you don't have to die to go to a certain plane of existence, and then third, as far as the Hulk is concerned, I think it would be Romanoff just because what Thanos at that time he saw Gamora, right? And Gamora at that time had died in order for him to get the Soul Stone. And though Tony's daughter is still alive and healthy and everything like that, I think it just makes sense. I think, well, for one, in order I'm thinking about who it was who all snapped. We got Thanos, we got Bruce Banner, Tony
And we
Stark.
got, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, unless I'm missing something, but those are the only three that we've seen snap on screen. And two out of the three have gone into this strange little pocket of
This
a
place,
like
this
reality for
orange place.
themselves. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
like, I mean, it's safe to assume like 2 out of 3. Like, I'm sure Hulk went to one. Like, I feel like that's consistent. And my mind is blown because apart from us having this conversation, I've never even thought of it. Like, to question, like, oh my God, did Hulk also go to this? And who did he see? Like, I'm so shocked that and it's not like I've seen this on any like subs.
Right.
Like, did we just birth a theory here?
Look at that. I think I have one more theory I want to throw out there just based on snaps. Who do you think Thanos saw on his second snap?
Wait, he snapped twice?
To destroy the stones.
To get rid of the stones. Ooh, okay. Okay. Wow. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so the thing is this, like, when we see Thanos, right, the one that made the original snap that got rid of half of existence, right? When he snaps the first time, he sees Gamora, and Gamora is like a younger version because I feel, and it makes sense because I feel like it speaks to him on a different level. You know what I mean? And she asks him like, "Oh, did you do it? What did it cost?" And he says like everything, and he says this in such a broken and like genuine like tone. You know, like there's so much pain behind it, especially speaking to his daughter that he undoubtedly loves, you know, sure. Like obviously has issues on how to express it, but undoubtedly
he's like, I'm gonna kill you though. I'm gonna kill you just to get this. I'm sorry, I love you, but I need this.
Exactly. And I feel like when he speaks, I do believe that there's a sensation of remorse in that tone. You know what I mean? Like it's not. He doesn't sound. What's the word? I'm trying to think of. He doesn't sound like infinite in that,
right?
You know what I mean? Like there's insecurity in that voice, and so I feel like the Thanos that we see at the start of Endgame, right, the same Thanos we just talked about, I feel like when we see him, he's not fighting back. He's not he's not looking to combat the Avengers. I think he knows he's gonna die and he's ready for it. You know, he kind of doesn't have anything left, right? And, he snapped away the stones maybe a couple days before that, right? And I feel like this is a man who sees the, horrific things that the stones could do. I think he still believed that he was right in what he did, right? But he knew enough that he got rid of the stones. So I feel like what I mean by that is I feel like his experience when he snapped it the second time and goes back into this pocket reality, I feel like he saw Gamora again. And I feel like their conversation may have been a little different and maybe hopeful. Like, I feel like he may have wanted to get some validation from her of, like, did I do something right? Did I at least get rid of it? Like, I just feel like this is something I envision. Like, I really feel like something like that would have taken a turn. But I don't doubt he went into another pocket reality. You know what I mean? Like, it would make sense for him to do it. It's consistent with the story.
Yeah, so right now... Feige time already. We're talking about Wakanda forever, but here, Feige, questions. We have a few snaps unanswered for. It's Thanos' second, Bruce's first, and was there anybody else that we're missing?
I think that's it. Honestly, I was shocked. I forgot that Thanos snapped twice. You know, so who knows? Maybe we're missing somebody, but I think we got them all.
Okay.
Snap, snap. We need answers. Like, I am so excited right now. I feel like we birthed something new, and I'm sure it's on some Reddit sub, but I haven't seen it, so I feel pretty good today. Okay. We could end the show right here, and I'd be happy.
The title, we got to stick with the title. We're 24 minutes in, and we're still talking about the first topic that we have yet to break, which is the ancestral plane that Shuri ended up going to.
Let's reel it back in.
Yeah.
There is actually a lot that I wanted to say in regards to the scene where Shuri sees Killmonger. You know, obviously she is so disappointed, but it makes sense for it to be him. And the thing is, I think it was such a smart move for them to have Shuri see Killmonger in the ancestral plane, because I feel like it connects these characters in the pain and the grief that they experience and how it expresses in their anger, and their very drastic decision making as a result, right? They very much like how they lead their lives with vengeance, which is a theme in both of their stories.
It's the
And I think
Wakanda
that this
story.
was
It's the Wakanda story.
the Wakanda
Vengeance.
story. And I think that this was so smart because Killmonger is undoubtedly a loved character. You know, like he's up there when it comes to the anti-heroes in terms of fan favorites, for sure, hands down. And I think in connecting them in their pain and their grief allows people to have a sympathy to Shuri that maybe people wouldn't be so easy to feel, especially after the things that she does, right? Because after this point, she does some like kind of sketchy stuff. Like she acts on her, vengeance with
Mm-hmm.
a lot of disregard to the safety of her people. Like you lose a lot of Wakandans in the battle that ensues very shortly after,
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they didn't kind of anchor her story to that of Killmonger, who I think people have a lot of empathy and sympathy for what he experienced and
Mm-hmm.
understanding for why he did what he did, I feel like Shuri could have fallen victim to kind of like the Wanda narrative. Because there's a lot of fans who just look at, say, Wanda Maximoff as a point blank villain, which she's not. There was a whole series just so you can understand her grief and her pain,
Mm-hmm.
which is substantial, to understand then like the horrific things that she does. Not that that makes them any better, but allows you to have empathy for those characters. And I think it was so smart for them to do this for Shuri so that it gave people the space to see her like that. Like she's in, like, she's hurting, she's in
Mm-hmm.
pain, she's grieving, and her actions reflect that. And I think it just allows people to see her in a little bit more of a sympathetic light, especially considering what's going to happen in a couple of extra scenes. So I just feel like that was a really smart move on Marvel's part.
Well, yeah, like I think we discussed it maybe wrapping up last show in terms of I'm glad they didn't bring like a CG Chadwick or any other person in. Eventually, we did get like let's say a glimpse of her mom, and we're going to talk about how she saw that. But when it comes down to bringing Killmonger in, and sidebar, for some reason I don't know why Michael B looked like he put even more size on
For these 5 minutes.
for like he actually looks like the Killmonger in the comic as opposed to like before first Black Panther is like yeah he's ripped and he got the scars and everything, but like for some reason here he just looked like he put on more size and actually looks like the Killmonger because his they did his hair again and his hair is longer than what it was in the first movie, so he's on the ancestral plane like getting built, you know what I'm saying? He's actually eating all his protein and hitting all of the weights just to get him where he's at, you know? But like as far as just the person for her to see, yes, it does make sense being that their quote unquote mission is almost kind of in aligned. Though like let's say his mission was it was more so vengeful on Wakanda and the fact that they kind of left him behind and kind of wrote him off, and hers is just vengeful on the people who just killed her mother, you know. So it makes sense why he shows up. It was a surprise. I was not expecting to see him in the film at all. And when it comes down to what he's saying and how it affects her, do you think she should have taken what he had into consideration? Sure, but at the end of the day, she, in my mind, this he caught her in a moment of weakness just because of them coming from two different places and her knowing the ways of Wakanda, her knowing that her mom wouldn't be the way that she was or her brother wouldn't be the way that she was after she came out of the ancestral plane. So he just happened to catch her at a moment of weakness, and that makes him more of a villain that you hate to love, you know.
I mean, no, 100%. Like he caught her in a space of like, I mean, complete vulnerability. Like this is only a week or so after the passing of her mom. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
she has not allowed herself to grieve her brother's death at all, and we know this. She really doesn't let herself even think of him for that reason. So there's so much like emotions being repressed, and she's just digging them deeper, and it's only expressing in like anger and vengeance, even though she knows that's not going to really get her what she's seeking. And unfortunately, yeah, she sees Killmonger, and I think in the moment she doesn't recognize that she is like him, because she says like, I'm not like you, I'm not like you at all. But he's playing his, like, he's a master manipulator. This is why I hate him. Like, anytime he shows up, I'm like, no, because he's efficient. He is a good bad guy. He plays the villain well. Like, I mean, you saw what he did in What If, and it wasn't great. Like, this guy could do a lot. You know what I mean? Like, he is. I like incompetent villains because they're not scary. He scares me. And so it's yeah. So I think that he came to her at a very vulnerable point, but I feel like ultimately, I think it does help her in the very end, because there is a turning point and like a point of redemption for her, to kind of see that she is just like him. And I think that's what kind of starts that spark into kind of coming back as Shuri, because she after that she leans really deeply in that pain.
Definitely. I think maybe the last point I think I want to just make, just with Killmonger as a character, everything that we've gotten from this ancestral plane, from What If to the story of the first Black Panther, no matter what, his story, he had taken 10, 15, 20 plus years to be the master at what he does. He had taken his time to plan and execute either infiltrating Wakanda and becoming king in the first Black Panther, doing what he did to Tony Stark, and still doing the same thing in What If, infiltrating Wakanda and betraying the U.S. government. Like, he is a very, like, though he's a villain, he is very, I think, masterful at what he can do. I think, honestly, he could be, not physically, but let's say, I heard this word, I forgot what it was, because Mary Jane said it in No Way Home. Fuck, I just watched it yesterday. But it's a certain type of, this is gonna bother me. Here we go again. But I don't want to say a mentality, but I would say it's almost on some Thanos level, in terms of, I don't want to say tactfully. I'm gonna find that word, but either way, in terms of level of villains in the MCU, I think if we were to do a tier list, and Thanos is top tier. I don't know if anybody else besides Killmonger, and then if Kang comes out to be who we want him to be, those are the three right now. Out of the 30 movies that I said, those are the only three that belong in the S tier, I think.
I mean, honestly, Ultron too. And to be honest, okay, if I were to rank it, and this, let's be real, this deserves a whole video in and of itself. But like, I honestly feel like it would go Killmonger, Ultron, and then Thanos. Only because, especially looking at the What If stories, because when we start debating characters and who ranks who, we do talk a lot about scenarios, and What If shows so many different scenarios that live in different parts of the universe, or multiverse, I'm sorry. And I mean, Ultron, like, just destroys Thanos when he arrives. And then Killmonger is the only thing that really gives Ultron in his greatest form any kind of rivalry. So I feel very confident saying that would be the order.
Okay. We're gonna do that one day. We're gonna do a tier list of villains, of all villains, everything from Mysterio to whoever the guy with the bald guy in Iron Man, the original Iron Man, everybody, So
yeah,
we're gonna do that one day. We have plenty of filler episodes to do, so that's just gonna be one of those episodes that we do. But kind of back to Wakanda Forever. Shuri, she comes out of the plane back to real life, and like it's frustration, but more confusion as to why her parents didn't come. I think we kind of clarified as to why it makes sense, but she doesn't understand. But she doesn't mention this to what's homegirl's name again? Like, cause she asked who she saw.
Nakia?
Who?
Nakia?
Yeah, Nakia.
Or even Riri, because Riri was there too, but Nakia is the one that asks her several times.
Sure, because Riri doesn't understand what's going on. Riri is just there for the fun.
There for the ride.
Right, exactly. You know? So only Wakandans know that they go to a plane to see someone that relates to them, you know? So, I don't remember, but did she say she saw no one, or she just didn't say anything?
I honestly don't remember. I know that the second time that Nakia asks her, she just doesn't respond,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I don't know what her response was the original time, but I mean, like, when she comes out of the ancestral plane, like, she is so angry.
Right.
You know, first and honestly, it is heartbreaking. Like, of all the scenes that I think that we got from Letitia, what's her last name? Right?
Yes.
Letitia Wright,
right.
yeah.
Letitia Wright. Mm-hmm.
From Letitia Wright, like, I think just to get this moment of her saying, like, they didn't come for me, like, that's heartbreaking. They didn't come for me. Like, it rejected me. Because at this point, she still thinks that the herb didn't work on her. You know, she finds out that it did. But, like, imagine that kind of sensation of rejection from, like, you know, what she must be feeling like her own family. Like, no one came for me. Like, that's sad,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
But I don't think it's not a matter of who came. I don't think they have like they have a choice, you know? I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's just where the herb takes them, you know? It's not like T'Chaka came to see T'Challa. I think T'Challa was taken by the herb to T'Chaka. You get what I'm saying?
I feel like even further, you can say that it's Bast who brings them to you when you go and enter the ancestral plane. You know, so I think you're right. I don't think it's like, I don't think they choose this. You know,
Right.
I think I feel like that would make so much sense because behind it all, it's Bast. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like, you know, she is a greater power that understands something we obviously don't, and she felt like this was something that Shuri needed to see, like, as a part of her greater journey, like, in the world, you know. And so I feel like that's like the only, because otherwise that's sad. That means nobody came for you, dude, and that is sad. And I don't think that's the truth, right? I don't think that's real.
I'm sorry, I'm still looking up that MJ quote.
I was gonna ask for you pause. I was gonna ask if you were still looking for it.
Yeah.
Well, here, I guess this is where, at this point, all of the people of Wakanda have taken refuge into the mountains with M'Baku and, like, his tribe. And all of the elders are talking about what will be the next step, because obviously Namor has waged war on Wakanda. He said, like, bury your dead, mourn your loved ones. We'll be back in like 7 days, in a week or something like that. And so they know that the clock is ticking, and they're, for the most part, very vulnerable. Like, you saw just what happened in the initial attack, and despite all the technology that Wakanda has, like, they really didn't match up to what, you know, the people of Tel Khan brought. And so they're very understandably worried. And right in this moment is where you get this iconic scene, and I'm so happy that the way that it happened, you see Shuri, you know, fall down from the, like, aircraft and land right at the center with all of the ancestors, and you hear the uproar of everybody because they now have their Black Panther, like a mantle and a symbol that for years and generations has meant so much and has been absent for this long. I mean, you can see why it gave so much joy to the people, you know?
Yeah, like, say initially when she came out and she landed, I didn't know how they were going to take it. I didn't know, like, once she revealed herself, if it was going to be relief, if it was just going to be I don't know, disappointment, just simply for the fact that, as we've seen, there's a ritual to become the Panther. So just out of nowhere, boom, here comes Shuri. and now what? Like people, and it's good, you know. They rejoice. It's like, yes, we have a new Panther, but like it's just different from their normal way. So I just didn't know if they were just like if they were going to be on some who told you to do this, we didn't agree to this, you know, like it was it was it was M'Baku that was supposed to be, you
Yeah.
know,
You
like
disrespect
right,
tradition.
right, exactly, and that's something that he said in the past. He said that right before he fought T'Challa, is like you have a younger sister who lives in a lab or something like that, disrespecting
Mox, yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff, you know. So even though in this movie we got more respect from him to her, like we already kind of knew how he felt before, you know, as far as what Shuri's concerned.
Yeah, and I think before we get into a little bit more about Umbaku and Shuri, because I feel like there's a lot to discuss there. Um, so when she jumps off, and I think the moment was beautiful. Like I think it was you could hear the uproar of hope in like such a dark time right now when they're trying to discuss like what the heck they're gonna do next. But then it follows with something that for me was very goofy, and I think it was more goofy for me just because I'm a fan of Twilight and the Twilight Saga, and so like they just look at each other, Umbaku and Shuri, and it's almost like they both know, like, okay, we have to do a arm wrestling match just so you know that I actually do have the strength and I'm not just wearing the mantle.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it just came off like the scene in like Twilight. I think it was like part 2 of Breaking Dawn, or like it
Oh
was
my
part
goodness.
because Bella already has her powers.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes up against like the beefiest dude in the family, and like they're arm wrestling, and she's kicking all their butts because she's a newborn, and newborns are more powerful. It felt like that.
Actually, you like saying that and me just remembering that scene, I'm just like, wait, an arm wrestling match? Like, T'Challa had to fight this dude in the water and could have potentially fell off a cliff, but we're just gonna see if you're worthy, if your superhuman strength could actually go against my human strength. Let's go, arm wrestle now. I'm like,
That's
whoa
what
there.
I'm saying. It's
What?
so goofy. It's so goofy. Like I think in retrospect, it's not like are you worthy? It's more like do you have the strength? Like I think it's an exciting point because when he realizes you're strong, it's like, hurrah! But like it's just the setup is so goofy to me, especially with me having that predisposition with Twilight. It was just, and that scene in and of itself was cringy in Twilight.
Right.
So it's like I feel like all of it made that scene look goofy to me. Like it could have just cut to him raising Shuri's arm, and I think it would have stayed feeling very powerful. I feel like that in the middle, it was kind of like.
Because in a fight, of course, at that time, being that she had the herb, it wouldn't be fair, you know. So let's arm wrestle, and that'll be fair. Like what? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it was weird. I didn't think too much about it until you just brought it up just now, but yeah, I won't have to speak to Feige about this. This is a question for Ryan Coogler. You know what I'm saying? What was that, Ryan?
Like, you know what? I think that was okay. I think you corrected yourself appropriately because this is more a directional standpoint. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, did you think it's cool? Did you think it like it? I don't think it delivered what you wanted because it made me laugh, and I don't think that's what you wanted me to do.
Shout out to we have another person in the chats, Reno Vendage or Vendange. So what's up, Reno? I appreciate you watching. He is laughing along with us. So yeah, that scene, it was just. I think we need to get past that scene. I'm over it.
Let's move on. No, let's move on to actually something I think that I'm really excited to talk about, okay. and we touched on it a little bit. It's M'Baku and Shuri. You know, because they definitely do have a very strong relationship in this film, and really by the end of the film, he is, I think, still a very strong, you know, like has a very strong friendship of like those like remaining in her life. You know, Nakia being one of them, etc. But like contrast that to the first film, really they had no real dialogue together apart from him saying like you're a child who scoffs at tradition, and you know when they're begging at his doorstep to help them, you know, protect Wakanda, and that's kind of it. And in this film we really do see that take a turn, and you know I think he has so many places where he tries to console her, give her counsel, and you can with the conversations that they had, you know, that it seems like T'Challa spoke to M'Baku with knowing that he may pass, that like, you know, like provide her with counsel, provide her with this, because she would be the last remaining heir to the throne.
Sure.
So he'd know that this would be a weight that would fall on her soon.
But let me ask you, let's say if moving forward, like she by chance falls in love and gives birth, it's not what's their last name? T'Challa is not the last name. What is the family's last name? Either way, I don't know. It wouldn't be of their bloodline, you know? Like I feel like Shuri is the last of this family to be a panther.
I mean, okay, well, the bloodline would continue, okay? The bloodline would continue.
Wakanda
I think we could look at
continue.
Game of Thrones. I'm like, hold on. I feel like the succession would look similar to like Game of Thrones and Rhaenyra and things like that too. So, I mean, we don't have a last name that I can actually ever think of us ever talking about when we talk about T'Challa and the Black Panther. These are royalty. You would think that you knew their last names. Even in the news, they just say Queen Ramonda.
Well,
we never thought to ask this?
What did the kid at the very end? What did the kid announce himself as? I am this son of this. Like what did he say his name was? His Wakandan name.
His Wakandan name is T'Challa. He just says he's like, okay, that was my French name, but my real name is Prince T'Challa. Isn't it just that?
Yeah, so I'm just like, maybe they just live by one name? Who knows? Wait, real quick. Does shout out to Reno again. It says I don't think there's a last name. But Grace, do you know Reno? Do you know that name? Yes, no, maybe so. Because they're throwing your full government out there. They said Miss Tenerio Lerma. Like it's like they're yelling it in text. I was like, oh, they actually know Grace for sure.
I don't know. I don't know if I just don't know like the login or something. But
Okay.
thank you for commenting.
Yep.
I love the shout out. Now I'm blushing.
Yep, it's one of your folks.
No, I think so. I think if like let's just say the throne, you know, went to Shuri, which we know it didn't,
Right.
because at the end of the film, you know, it's Challenge Day, which is kind of going back to the tradition, like you talked about, right? Because there are certain steps and procedures that happen within the nation of Wakanda, especially when it comes to who inherits the throne and things around that nature. So, like we saw in the first film, before T'Challa was crowned king of Wakanda, it was Challenge Day, right? Which means anyone of royal bloodline could challenge for the throne. And, you know, they went like tribe by tribe to see if anyone was, and it was like, well, you know, the merchant tribe will not challenge today. And it would continue on. And then ultimately we hear M'Baku and what's his tribe? Is it just the mountain tribe? What's his tribe?
I think it's just the mountain tribe.
Yeah, we'll just go with that. They descend because within the rules of the land, like M'Baku does have a claim, you know, and it's Challenge Day. Like we give you a door to a gateway to the throne, and he challenges T'Challa. And so now that this whole national threat has been subdued, they're now falling back into the tradition, and of course that means it's Challenge Day. And we see M'Baku arrive instead of Shuri, and he says something along the lines of like, the princess could not make it today. So you can assume that this is being done with her consent. You know, she has, you know, walked away from the throne. M'Baku, who we've known from the beginning, has had, you know, passions to rule Wakanda, and now has, you know, the opportunity to do so and the blood right to do so. So unless there's someone who challenged his challenge, he's the king by the end of this.
So,
you know,
so because he's king, will he be given the herb? So will there be like two panthers out there?
Oh, this leads a whole different okay. Quick answer, yes. By tradition, he would receive the heart-shaped herb, and he would be another Black Panther. He'd hold that mantle. That's been the tradition of Wakanda for decades. Like that would go unchanged. But now, and obviously we've like jumped to the very end, guys, but we go with the flow here, right? Now, like my question in regards to that is, you know, is Shuri allowed to keep the powers of Black Panther, since that's not really within tradition? Like, how do you feel about that? Like, do you have thoughts in regards to that?
She made it, you know what I'm saying? She's like, listen, this is technically my herb, so I think here we're gonna plan a little patch over here. Y'all can have that. I'm gonna just go over to Haiti, kick it with my homegirl, T'Challa, my brother's ex, see what's popping over there. And then, figure out life, figure out how to grief. But the Panther blood is mine.
You know something? Okay, word for word, that's Shuri. That is,
Mm-hmm.
because from the first film, like, she's not someone of tradition. Like, like, it's almost evident in a lot of the scenes. Like, I'm thinking of when she says, like, what are those? To T'Challa, when he
Mm-hmm.
goes into her lab,
Yeah.
because he's like, I wanted to go traditional for my first day of work, and she's like, no, 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 let me show you my sneakers. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't really hold tradition in the same way as some of her other, like, family members or the elders or anything like that. And you see this again at the start of this film, because the first thing you hear, right, the screen is black, and she's speaking to Bast, like, if you save my brother, I will never question your existence again. Like, it's very much a part of her, like,
Yeah.
that rebellion. So it makes sense that she walks away from the throne, and it makes sense for her to be like, this is mine and farewell, especially because it's not within tradition. Like, it makes a lot of sense for her character,
Right.
for sure.
We got some feedback first. As far as Reno, it's Kevin, and I think Kevin, I've met you, right, over at the
I know
job.
several
Yeah, I
Kevins.
think this is the
You gotta,
Kevin,
like,
like, because there's a Kevin that follows us on this, and I think it's that Kevin. Maybe martial arts
I'd be
Kevin,
happy to see any
bodybuilder
of the
Kevin. I think
Kevins.
that's him. And it says he just mentioned, he said he thinks the powers are temporary. I don't know if that is conclusive. Do we know if the powers of this herb or any herb, heart shaped herb, is temporary or is pretty much permanent, right?
So, the precedent is, like, the recipient of the heart-shaped herb. That's not something that weans away. Like, it's constant unless it's removed, like we've seen in, like, the
Right.
traditional stuff that they do.
Mm-hmm.
However, like, I do want to entertain this question, because she's making a synthetic version of the herb. So I feel like they assume it to function the same way as the original, and I think we assume it to function the same way in that it's permanent. It's not like a temporary
Right.
thing. However, we don't know. Like, this is very much like unexplored territory. Like, we don't know. Like, what if it's like that thing that they took in The Boys, where they have powers and every time, what I mean? What if there are repercussions
The
that they don't actually know
V24
about?
basically.
I'm just saying, I don't know. Like, so honestly, like, that's a really good question. Like, if it works exactly as the original, then it is permanent. But there is room for error, even for someone like Shuri. I think it said it's nine. I think when she took it, it said 98% like confidence rate
Mm-hmm.
in what she made. So there is a percent to maybe suggest that maybe it's not permanent. And it's hard to say how that looks. So I'm interested to see if that's something they will explore in future films, or if we can just assume it is constant.
In Civil War, do you think T'Chaka had the herb removed by that point?
Okay. I'm so happy you brought this up, because I've had questions about this, right? So when we meet um, T'Challa, and I know you said T'Chaka, but when we meet T'Challa, right, his father is obviously still alive, right, King T'Chaka.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why King T'Chaka wouldn't have the heart-shaped herb still in him. He's alive. It would make no sense why they would remove it. It's not like, oh, you're over 65, you no longer get, you know what I mean? So it would be safe to assume that he still had the herb. But then, why did he die in an explosion when we've seen T'Challa go through some similar situations and be relatively fine?
Well,
And it,
that leads us to believe that the Wakandans, they stick to tradition of only being one panther, and by that point, T'Challa had already been a panther. It wasn't like something that was passed down. His dad dies, like, oh, now I'm the panther now. I think it was already safe to assume, just because of his youthfulness, he had already been the panther at that time. And I think that explains why his dad died in that explosion, because I think if his dad was still on the juice, then by that point he probably would have he would have maybe gotten injured, but he would have healed, because that's what the herb would have done for him.
You know something, I like that explanation, and this has been something I've questioned, but then I always forget. Like, I only remember to think of it whenever I rewatch Civil War. And I actually really do like that, you know, because maybe the way that it happens is that the blood descendant, or the person who's next in line for the throne, when, say, the older Black Panther has just come to maybe an age where it's time to start maybe just grooming the next heir, that they start to kind of take on those roles. And maybe a part of that is they also take the heart-shaped herb in exchange. I could see that. It's not, it hasn't been spoken, but it would explain that situation. So yeah, like, I like that. I like that.
I like it just simply for the fact that, like, say if for one, if he didn't, or if he did have the herb still in him, then I believe he would be alive. But say if we're talking about super soldiers in old age, we know that they're still strong. We saw that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier with that black super soldier. And the fact that Steve Rogers is probably like 200 years old, I think that it's the serum that's keeping him alive, one. And then two, I don't think he can still move like youthful Steve Rogers, you know? So I think there is a certain age to where it's just like, they may still have the strength, but it's just like it's time to where we need to kind of kick back. We let the more youthful take on this power. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think Steve Rogers could wield the shield like he was before he went back in time. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, like he becomes kind of like the active duty Black Panther in that sense.
Right.
And so it would make sense why he would accompany his like father to this diplomatic meeting. And we're obviously referring to the events of Civil War. You know, because he's basically the number one bodyguard for his father, which then sets up kind of that conversation in the first film with M'Baku and everyone, like, you couldn't even keep your own father alive. You know, so I feel like that falls in line with exactly what you're saying, that might just be the custom they do.
Sure.
And I don't even know how we fell into this theory or conversation, but I'm excited that we fell into it, because it's something I've asked myself a couple times, and I've just never really thought more into it to kind of explore different scenarios. But honestly, this makes total sense.
We didn't see any Dora at that UN meeting, you know, so it was just T'Chaka and T'Challa, you know, so I think it just established that, yes, T'Challa was the quote unquote bodyguard of the king, so it would make sense that he had the panther, or he had the heart-shaped herb, and his dad had taken whatever potion it was to remove it from his bloodstream, so he was no longer a panther at that point.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And so we've pretty much covered like that one of those final scenes, which is where we see M'Baku essentially claim the throne, because I don't think there's anyone going to be contesting that.
Right.
And so it looks like we're going to have at least 2 Black Panthers. But now I'm going to segue into my next theory, and that there's actually 3 active.
Are you saying the son has some panther blood in him?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Okay, so one of the post-credit scenes that we see, actually the only post-credit scene that we see, is
boo Marvel. Continue. I'm sorry.
Is we get the reveal that T'Challa had a son, and his like legal name is also Prince T'Challa, which I think is beautiful. Just because this film had such a huge task to tackle, which is to make us like make sense of his death in the film in a way that was respectful of Chadwick Boseman's, you know, real life, you know, early passing for us. And I think that they did a really good job in that. Yeah. I really do. And I think that this was kind of like the final thing to really tie it together. And I think it's beautiful. And so, in regards to this character, so we have, T'Challa Jr. running around.
Mm-hmm.
There is no comic book reference of, I believe, T'Challa having a son. However, there is a storyline that I believe lives in one of the cartoon series in which T'Challa and Storm from the X-Men
Mm-hmm.
have a child. And that child is born with the powers of Black Panther, so he's classified as a mutant. Very, very similar to how we hear Namor's story, and that he was born with these abilities, right? He didn't take an herb or anything like that.
Right.
It's very similar, and so being that this explanation of his child in in the show is honestly very parallel to how they explain Namor and his powers and his genealogy, I really feel like this is all almost foreshadowing that we're gonna get another Black Panther, and it's gonna be T'Challa Jr. And I really like that. Whether they do it or not, I think that this is a really cool Easter egg. And I feel like it's possible that they'll do it.
I'm not opposed to it. Yeah.
Especially because there is a team called, I think is it the New Avengers? I can't remember the name because I get it confused with Young Avengers, but I think it's the New Avengers. And it's a team made up of the offspring of the original Avengers, and this little T'Challa Jr. is a part of it. And so I feel like this makes sense, especially because we have Thor: Love and Thunder, right? Love is Thor's daughter in this in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple of those teams just lining up. I'm just saying. So I feel like it makes sense.
I'm going to throw one out there, and then we're going to get back to the movie. In watching No Way Home, Peter Parker, MJ arrived to the high school. Someone in the crowd likes, MJ, I love you, are going to have all the spider babies. So, hypothetically...
This is the new Mephisto, guys. We have baby fever.
Hypothetically, if they have a child, do you think this baby is going to have some type of Spidey ability?
You mean Mayday Parker?
Oh,
You're
wow.
damn right
Wow.
I do.
Okay.
So I'm just, yes.
Okay.
The baby fever is real.
Okay.
Give us the New Avengers. We have spoken. Thank you, Kevin Feige.
Well, Kevin Feige, we've already established that he's on his third generation of ant people. So, I mean, the generations are coming no matter what.
It's coming. I mean, they got this, like, okay, let's be real. This is all about the money, right? Like, this is an industry that's made them money for the past, like, decade and a half. So it makes sense for them to continue this and plan this out for multiple generations. And I'm cool with that. Like, I pay the subscription for Disney Plus. I go to the movies several times. Like, we are slaves to the MCU, and I do that willingly. So it is what it is.
We're gonna see Hulk's son in the near future. Just
oh my god, I forgot about Hulk's son.
So, yep.
We're on fire, dude. Yep. We're on fire today.
Yep.
It's been a rough week. We deserved this.
I think the only offspring that don't really follow in the footsteps of their parents, as we know of so far, is of Hawkeye. Like, his kids aren't really going to be, I don't think, the next Hawkeye, being that we have Kate Bishop. So I think he's the only one that doesn't really have, like, people following in their father's footsteps, so.
Yeah. And, you have teams like the New Avengers, and you have teams like the Young Avengers, and I'm just looking to make sure I'm using the right name for the ones I'm talking about, because I believe in New Avengers, I think those are the ones with, like, the offspring. I think I'm right. We'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll outline it for you guys.
Well, but we'll break it down. It's coming.
We'll break it down. I think the Young Avengers is the team that we've seen forming with, like, Kate Bishop and Wakanda. Why can't I deal with this? Wanda's kids and things like that. But there is the separate team, and I think it's the New Avengers and the Young Avengers. I'm just kind of mix matching which one means which, but we'll figure out and lay it out for you guys, because it's going to mean something. I feel like they really are building multiple teams right now, and there's a lot of clues to suggest that.
You know what clues that I'm going to take, and I said we're going to get back to the movie, but as of right now, every offspring is a mutant, okay? And we're just gonna end it at that. Just because of Namor being one, we can say homegirl Miss Marvel, she's an offspring, and somehow she's a mutant. You know that comes from her great 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 grandma or whatnot. So as of right now, especially with Wanda Maximoff's kids, everybody in the world of 616 is normal until exposed to something extraordinary, and then their kids are the mutants of the future of the MCU. Boom. That's how we get the mutants in there.
Chef's kiss. It has been done. It has been done. You know what I love? I love the history of the comics in that, you know, they were like, okay, you get bit by a bug and become this. You get the hammer and you become this. You made this suit and you become this. And then at some point they're like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of coming up with all these origin stories. There are people who are just born this way. And then that was the birth of the X-Men. But that's literally what happened. They were like, guys, we can't keep coming up with these origin stories. Like, we just gotta make this easier for us. And so that's what it is. So basically, that's the classification. I mean, if it's not because you were exposed to something, you build something or something of the sort like that, if you're born with these things, you're a mutant. If you have, like, a repressed mutant gene and it exposed by the whatever missed, then you're an inhuman, but that conversation doesn't seem to exist in the MCU, so we will not have it. We'll continue from here.
We're gonna see whenever phase 6 or phase 7, whatever is the last phase in this saga, we'll see mutants then. We're gonna give them some time, whether it be 5 years, whether if it's 10 years, just so we can let these seeds plant and grow. And then we'll finally get the X-Men, maybe at the end of that saga, who knows, but they're coming. I have hope now, because initially we're just like, where are they? But now it's like, okay, they just haven't been born yet, or they're still toddlers, and they're gonna grow and gain their powers, basically.
I'm done with that.
Okay,
I'm excited.
thank
You have to let this grow on its own.
I didn't have to go to the little Marvel camp, Feige. I figured it out. You know what I'm saying? Plan out the next 10 years if you want. Boom. Grace and I, we just talked it out in the last 5 minutes.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You know the IG handle?
Yep.
Hit it up.
Yep, there it is. It's at the bottom of the screen. It's right here. They see it. But say where were we? We were all right, we're planning for war here. Wakanda is getting ready just because as of right now I think it's clear Shuri is on a war path. She wants blood, and we get the normal montage of getting ready, and we see Riri. She's actually putting her suit together, and this is a brand new suit, correct? This isn't a continuation of the suit that was left, or no, I think the suit was missing off the bridge in the daytime, so maybe the Wakandans actually took her suit just so she can continue on it. What do you think?
I think it could be either one of those. I honestly feel like they would just take her design and make her own suit from scratch. You know what I mean? I don't know why they would work with such primitive metals, you know, when they just have vibranium, you know? And so, yeah, and actually, because we talked about this briefly last time, like, I kind of had forgotten what the timeline was. I feel like I thought it was, like, I assumed it was, like, months just based on the fact that they built these suits, especially looking at Riri Williams. This is a week, bro. This, they gave them a week. And they attacked them before they attacked, you know what I mean? So it might have even been sooner than that. Like, they were able to build this in that kind of a time span. Like, that's amazing. And so I think it speaks a lot to, obviously, the power of Wakanda and what they're capable of doing, but also Riri. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense, like, why she's in MIT. You know, like, I think she's a worthy character to hold what we see as synonymous to the Iron Man mantle. You know?
Well, yeah, like, let's say I like that in the fact that, yeah, it's Riri and her genius, but at the same time, Riri and her genius, I'm sure wherever she was at MIT, she was taking spare parts here and there to build her suit to where she can go to Wakanda, and I'm sure they have a vibranium, like, 3D printer, you know what I'm saying? Because they were just making, like, coming up with like a 3D design and designing everything, and then I think it wouldn't be anything. It wouldn't take much just to put the suit together. I don't think Tony's suit's even took that long. Like once after the first one, after the Mach 1, he was like, all right, I'm printing these bad boys out like hotcakes. And then Iron Man 3, you see there's like 100 Iron Man suit out there. So I think Wakanda has the technology, just like next day delivery. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, basically, and I think it was one of those things I wrote down after watching it the second time, because we had just talked about it, you know, and so it was kind of fresh on my head. I'm like, oh wow, like this was a week, because I think I said, I'm like, it must have been months, you know, like it just made sense. Like you built this badass suit and you got ready for war. Seems like that stuff takes time, but not for the Wakandans.
Yeah,
not for the Wakandans.
So let's come to the war, because as of right now, Shuri, they've come out with a plan to weaken Namor. So they bring him out to sea. How did they bring him out again?
So the way that they lured the people of Talokan to their location was they, I think, utilized.
Was it the seashell?
Riri's. What was that?
I was just asking. Was it the seashell that?
No. They utilized Riri's design for the vibranium, like detector, and so Namor was notified that they like found or had like, I don't know how they detect that a vibranium detector was being used, but they obviously know that because we saw that earlier in the film. And so they basically got that same radar that a vibranium detector is being used, and then they located that location, and that was a trap set by the Wakandans. And so honestly, that is so smart. That is so smart, because if they used the shell, they would know who's calling and would prepare accordingly. True. You know, and approach in a little bit more of a cautious way, where they're sensing the vibranium detector, and they've already handled someone trying to do that. You know, it was the US, you know, that's like nothing to them. Yeah. So I think it was such a smart way for them to lure the people of Talokan to their location without them knowing it's them.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Did you want to continue from there?
Yeah, so here you get like a series, which I think really does outline Shuri's plan, because this is Shuri's plan, and honestly, it's very well thought out. You know, there's nooks and crannies of it that has some holes, and I think that's where you do see a lot of Wakandan life being lost. But for the most part, like, her plan was thought out, even with all of that like speed of her aggression and her frustration. So they have like the bell, right, that like lures them in, and then they have like this sonic like vibration being sent out into the water that basically renders like the people of Talokan kind of like it kind of disables them to a degree. You know, some of them we do see being able to then approach where this like sonic wave is coming from and then disable it. But for the moments that it was working, it was effective, you know, and this allowed the Wakandans to kind of set up the rest of like the battle. And so we see that everyone kind of has like their role, right? They know that like they're going to be scaling the side of the ship. So you have like the Dora Milaje being held by like the mountain tribe, like on these like ropes. I mean, it's like, it's so beautifully like displayed. I don't even know how to express it. Like, I don't even know how to like explain it, but you guys saw it. Otherwise, what are you guys here watching the show for? Go check out the movie. But you know what I'm talking about. Right. It was cool. Like every little piece of that fight was orchestrated like from Shuri's like commands, you know, and you saw where like there was pitfalls to it, but for the most part it was very well thought out.
Can I ask you a question about the Talokan real quick?
Yeah.
So do they have like, they're not Atlanteans, okay? We kind of established that in the last episode, and the only reason why I bring this up is because Aquaman could speak to the life underwater. But here we have them, instead of using technology, they're using whales, they're using sharks, they're using sea life, like it's under their control, you know? Do you think it's just on some like down there they have these beasts as like pets and they could just ride them whenever? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, it can be any of those actually, because even in Aquaman, we see characters use like sea life as like horses going into battle and things like that. Even if
Mm,
it's not like a character like Aquaman himself, who we know does speak directly to these like animals.
mm-hmm.
And so it could be that this is just like how people back in the day would use horses in battle. Like that
Okay.
might just be the equivalent. Or it might be because they can actually speak to these animals. It's hard to say. And I know you said like, oh, they're not
Atlanteans.
Atlanteans,
Mm-hmm.
but keep in mind like their origins in the comics, they
Are
are
the same, pretty
Atlanteans. And,
much, yeah.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it actually predates Aquaman, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say. Like I think that the people of Telecan is still something um are still like people that we need to be like kind of fleshed out or see more of, honestly. And I think I talked about this last time. And I'm gonna bring
Don't
this
talk
up
about the leaf,
in
please.
my
Leave
notes.
that
I'm
leaf
gonna bring
alone.
it up, the leaf. No, like I have it in my notes because I'm like, okay, I gotta revisit the leaf. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was giving the movie such grief because I feel like all that registered to me when I was looking at the scene of Telokan was these, people just smiling goofily and holding on to a leaf, like they're very amused by these little simple things.
Mm-hmm.
And watching it the second time, I think I was able to see a little bit more detail that I didn't, I think, catch the first time. Like I think what they were trying to come across was a very similar vibe of Wakanda, where there's like merchant stuff happening. You see like exchanges of goods and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I still will say, although it wasn't as goofy as my first time running, because I was ready to watch it and like just be, I don't know, just be ready to kind of talk about it again.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as goofy as the first time I saw it, but I will say I still don't think that they showcase like the society of like Talokan, or like just the people of Talokan, in as much detail as they could have. And I think that kind of that discussion of like, how do they use their animal life? Like, what does that look like to their like people?
Mm-hmm.
We still need to learn so much more. And I think that's just one of those things that we kind of want to get a little bit more fleshed out. Like, can they talk to like the animals of the sea? Can they move water? Can they like? There's a lot of things that we just do not know. And so I hope that's something that we get in future films.
One thing that like I was just kind of looking up just now. I was looking up two locations. I was looking up the fictional whereabouts of the country of Wakanda in the continent of Africa, one, and C, and then two, in relations to where it is in the Indian Ocean, because if we're going to draw out these people, to have an ocean fight, why not draw it out, where there is a robot coming out of the water, give us some type of connection, just so we have something. And like, if we're going to have a water fight, let's go fight where, something got lost in the water that we will never see again, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, yes. That's all I can say. Do we know what part of the ocean that like the thumb is sticking out of? Do we know? I feel like we should know.
They say it's the Indian Ocean, so.
Oh, then honestly, there's no excuse.
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah, and the by the Googles say that Wakanda is on the east part of Africa, quote unquote, and the Indian Ocean is actually the eastern coastline of Africa. So why not just connect the dots? Sorry, Kugler, this is a Feige question. Why not just connect it for us? Why not? Let me know. Holler at me.
And also, the tremble in the Indian Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously wasn't talking about the people of Talokan.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the timelines shifted a little, right? Because the events of Eternals is after everyone's come back. Right. So completely different piece. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, they could have made it, like, if you could have made that comment, like, at the end of Endgame, and we could have been like, oh my God, the Eternals, this is the thumb, that was the tremble. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, so many things could have been connected in some way, shape, or form, and you just left them hanging.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, we'll see. It's just one of those unanswered questions, one of those strings that we need to tie up that loose end, because it's gonna bother me until it's not. Okay, y'all hearing the
Well, they gave
internet?
you a little. They gave you a little relief in She-Hulk when there was that like sidebar of like this thumb sticking out of the Indian
Mm-hmm.
Ocean. So they gave you something, but still. In that same conversation, though, I know that this episode has taken many of detours, but honestly, I feel like being that this is the film that wraps up this phase,
Mm-hmm.
the first phase of this new saga, I think it's appropriate for us to kind of see how this affects the greater part of the MCU. And I think a big part of it, and this is a piece that I was kind of disappointed about because we had theories that it might come up, is that there was no mention of adamantium.
Mm-hmm.
And being that this film talks so much about what would happen if vibranium escaped Wakanda
Mm-hmm.
or if other people tampered with it. And that's basically the looming threat that this whole film is centered around. It's the whole reason that these two people, the people of Talokan and the people of Wakanda, have come to war,
Yeah.
is because, you know, the other part of the world is threatening what they hold like most dear and basically like tainting it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would have made sense to have some reference, or maybe this is just too soon. Maybe this is just too soon. But, you know, being that adamantium is an alloy metal combined with vibranium, I learned this from you and then I researched it myself. I really thought we were going to get some reference to it, like just something.
It's
And the
coming.
fact that we didn't, I feel like it is getting close. Like maybe this is just too early because, like we see in this film, um, the greater part of the world, that's like a beeline story. You know, like the greater threat of the world
Mm-hmm.
against Wakanda and Talokan, those are beeline. Like you see that as a looming threat, especially because you hear the conversation that like the US is having, that they're trying to destabilize Wakanda, that they want to, you know what I mean? Those
Yeah.
kinds of things. You know, the threat is still there. So maybe it's just too early on.
I don't want. I don't want to say that. I would like say, just to kind of back that up. I would say secretly, and even though we have talked about it already months ago, adamantium is already out there. It just wasn't brought out in this film.
Wolverine.
Yeah, just simply for the fact that if we're gonna talk about the web page where She-Hulk is looking up a job, and then on the sidebar we're talking about the man in the Indian Ocean. On that sidebar there is a man in a bar fight with metal cloths. So with that being said, adamantium is out there. It's just hasn't been talked about yet.
And even beside that point, like Deadpool is confirmed, Wolverine is confirmed. We know that adamantium is, you know, the base of the skeleton of Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already out there. That's so true. And I wonder, oh my God, I cannot wait to see then what, like the reaction of both Wakanda and Talokan once they realize that not only has like vibranium fallen into the hands of other people,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually been
Molded and
molded
changed
into
and
something.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah,
what a
it's out
slaps
there.
in the face. What a slaps in the face. Like I'm just saying, there's no other way of that's like cheating. You just offended Wakanda. Like that's
Do you think?
you're done.
Wait. Do you think Captain Shield is uh like disrespectful to Wakanda?
Well, I mean, in a sense, it was stolen from Wakanda and then handed to the Americans who know where it's from, but it's like, I feel like it's a symbol. Honestly, the symbol's kind of funny, right? Because obviously it's a symbol of America and all those things. But in the same sense, it's made of vibranium that people took from Wakanda, right? Some like a resource that countries are trying to, you know, take from them, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like I feel like like the shield is obviously means so much, like patriotically speaking, but being that it's made out of vibranium and the way that we see them treat like Claw and things like that who have like taken advantage of that, like I feel like there's cases to be made to say that like the shield also is kind of a
Property of Wakanda.
disrespect to Wakanda a little bit. You know what I mean? I feel like
Yeah.
there's a baseline to say that. You know, it's not like we see that being said, but it's interesting how those things mesh. You know, and I feel like the symbols stand. You
I
know.
think it makes more sense now. Sam decides to put it up in a museum, right? And then from there, Wakandans are just like, Yeah, nah, we actually have claim just because it's ours, and we didn't sign off on y'all having that. So, USA agent or whoever you are, whatever your name is, it doesn't even matter. We just beat you up trying to get to Zemo. We're actually gonna take our shield. We're gonna take our shield back.
Dude, why was that not a storyline?
Mm-hmm.
So many things missed MCU in this phase. I'm just saying, the thumb, the shield, the fact that like Wakandans, the Dora Milaje are in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, literally going after Zemo,
Wait,
right?
hold on. You froze.
No,
Can
can
you
you
see
hear
me?
me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but
Oh, I
you
can see and hear you. I
okay?
froze.
Like, am I moving? Do you see me moving?
I see everything.
Yeah. All right.
That's okay. See, I'm a very animated person, so I'm very scared at where it froze. It could be like, it could be anywhere. But anyways, you can hear me, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's all
I
that
may have to
matters.
go back to the image.
Hey, that's okay. That's where we have it. I have to give you an updated one with my blue hair though, but
Yep,
it's
you sure
okay.
do.
All right. So, as I was saying, you have the Dora Milaje already in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The item at hand that's like a full discussion in the entire series is Cap's shield that's made of vibranium.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in the same playing fields, but it's never mentioned or commented to, especially when the conversation is back and forth on should Sam take the shield? What is the symbol of him taking the shield? What is you know what I mean? Like, that's actually very interesting that they never explored that.
It
Wow.
like we're asking all the right questions, but I think at the end of the day, we're creating more threads that we may get to eventually, just because it's like you have that like whenever what's Tony's dad's name again?
Howard Stark?
Whenever Howard Stark got the vibranium, right? I'm assuming it was in rock form, and then he formed it into a shield. He didn't get it from Wakanda as a shield, so he somehow got it. And then, being that somehow later on we kind of get a feeling that Tony has done dealings with Claws at weapons conventions or whatnot. Let's say there could have been a convention that Howard Stark got the vibranium from somebody, and then who's to say that? Oh, you're back. Awesome. I could take you off. Boom.
Hi.
Perfect. And who's to say that there was somebody else at the convention that Howard went to that got vibranium as well and molded it into adamantium? Just because we know Wolverine in his history, he's not someone new. This is someone that's lived in the through the ages, and through all the Wolverine movies, it could have been something that he could have got in the 50s and 60s and then had for the rest of his life. So there's so many storylines that we can tug on and kind of, I don't want to say make up, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like it all makes sense. It just hasn't been put onto film.
Something like I this is such a like new territory in terms of like just conversations that I've never had. And I think with that whole thread of like, we know that adamantium has existed in the MCU. We know this because Wolverine is confirmed. Like you said, Wolverine goes through generations because he doesn't age like everybody else. It would make sense that when the borders of Wakanda were breached back when Claude took the original like mound of vibranium,
Mm-hmm.
that um is like, I wonder if that's also,
We don't know how Howard Stark got that
that's
vibranium.
what I'm wondering, because I'm trying to think of the timeline, but that's back in World War II, and that's the different timeline as you're right. So there was another breach.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's what they're going to explore at some point whenever they start to have that conversation of adamantium. They have to have that conversation of how did the vibranium get out? Like, when did it get out?
Mm-hmm.
What's the story? And it has to connect with the shield that Howard has, because I think World War II would make sense for like maybe Wolverine to have, you know what I mean? Oh, but also Wolverine originally didn't have the adamantium, you know?
What do
It
you mean?
wasn't until later that he got like his skeleton was made of adamantium down the road. So I guess it would just be between anytime between when Howard got it and then afterwards is where that could have been blended into Wolverine's like skeleton, you know. So there's time, but the matter stands that adamantium exists. Wolverine has it.
Stop right there. Just because if we're gonna talk that, like, say Howard Stark got his via like circa World War II, in the quote unquote Wolverine movie, X-Men Origins Wolverine, I would say that's this almost same time frame as when Stryker approached Wolverine and Sabretooth. You know, it was around World War II, to where I think they were approached. I don't think it was, or maybe, never mind, it may have been like Vietnam. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think it was World War II, just because Strucker doesn't age like they do. You would be dead by now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but I think this does say, like, okay, I've already written it down. Guys, a whole episode is just going to be dedicated to looking at the timeline of where adamantium comes into conversations. Mm-hmm. Looking at the timeline of when when vibranium has escaped Wakanda, mm-hmm. to look at the different timelines in which they can match to how Strucker got it, to then be able to create adamantium, to then embed it into Wolverine. Mm-hmm. This is important because it's going to come up. You can't bring adamantium into the MCU and not explain how that was created, since we know the base is of vibranium, and this entire film is based on them wanting to protect that. Like, it's going to be a part of the conversation. So that's going to be an episode in and of itself.
Yep.
TBD.
Yep. Where are we? Are we in battle? We're in battle right now. We need to get past this battle real quick, because we're low key within the last few minutes of the movie. You know, like, say, they draw the Talocans out. Mm-hmm. Talocans come with all of their whales, you know, and they're coming to the Wakandan ship, and then Namor, he comes out the water and starts attacking, right? And it wasn't until, because they have to trap him into a ship. How do they trap him into the aerial ship?
How do they lure them in? Oh, okay. So basically, Riri kind of instigates Namor, because they're both flyers, right? So they take the fight into the clouds, and basically, what's the name of the AI that they use in the movie? Do you remember?
No.
I don't remember it. Creel? I think it's like Creel or something like that. But basically, the AI that Shuri kind of uses throughout the film maneuvers the ship in a way to kind of capture him. And the ship has been modified to basically act as almost like a dehydration.
Like an air fryer.
Like an air fryer, yeah, basically an air fryer. You know what's funny? Because Riri's like, "Can you do that?" And Shuri's like, "Yes, I can." Like, it's just,
yeah. So can Best Buy, basically.
Basically. Mm-hmm. So they make it into like an air fryer, and mm-hmm. they start to weaken him, because they realize that Namor, you know, as they're kind of analyzing what happened in the battle that happened in Wakanda, mm-hmm. they realize that he keeps going up and down into like the water, and so they also think about, like, well, he doesn't have gills. How does he breathe?
Keep going. I'm sorry. I'm just going to turn the light on in here.
Oh, that's okay. How does he breathe? Because the rest of his people do have gills. And so part of his mutation is that he takes in air through his skin, much like other creatures that do, like, in our real world. And so that's essentially what they use to try to conjure up a way to weaken him.
Right.
And this is what they do, and we learn that it is effective. Immediately you can see that he's much weaker, like he's having a hard time moving. And that's where they kind of start to level the playing field.
Yeah, and it comes to the point to where he realized what they're doing. So it's really nothing for him, being that it is established he has the superhuman strength. So he can take his vibranium against their vibranium ship and somehow destroy it. How he knows where to hit the ship to destroy it, it's a mystery, you know. But he ends up destroying it, and then they land on the beach from there, and then it's 1-on-1, mano-a-mano, Black Panther Shuri versus Namor.
And before we get into that whole segment, The reason that he compromises the integrity of the ship is because he's hitting the ship with raw vibranium, and
Mm-hmm.
we learn from the first film that raw vibranium can be explosive or compromised in certain situations. Like that's why they transport vibranium with something that destabilizes it, just so that it's not a hazard. And so by him, attacking the ship with what he has, which is raw vibranium, versus assuming, which is like the refined version that they use in their weapons, etc., that are more stable.
Mm-hmm.
That is how like he compromises the ship and it explodes, and then they land into what ends up being like their final kind of battle.
Yeah. And in their final battle, it's one thing to kind of envision T'Challa versus Namor, and then here comes Shuri, and she's new to us as a Panther, and we're seeing her do some cool acrobatics on the ship, but on here, I don't know. I was expecting just a little bit more of a fight from her. I don't know. I think it could have been better for me. Uh, her kind of all I can say is she did the best she could, and she was able to take a spear to the stomach and keep it moving. She didn't take it like a little girl. She took it like a champ, and ended up. How did she ended up being that it's a little bit more fresh? Tell me how she kind of came about after the spear.
So she gets pinned to like this rock with like the spear, and she's stuck in this position. Namor is walking away. He collapses at one point, I think, in this scene because he's dehydrated. And I think when she escapes, they kind of start going back and forth. And then ultimately she does like she has like the ship essentially completely explode,
Mm,
and that fire like catches his skin, and I think weakens him further from what he was already at.
right.
And then that's where she holds the spear to him. um and before we get into the next part, because obviously this is where we get into like Queen Ramonda and all those things,
Yeah.
um but I feel like when it comes to this fight sequence, I feel, and we've talked about this before, like it's one thing to have the choreography, and there's also another thing with like the emotional weight behind
Right.
the fight itself. And I think the emotional weight is there, but I feel like it wasn't fully explored in this fight scene. Like I feel like I wanted a little more. I think I agree. Like I wanted a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I wanted it to feel like Killmonger against T'Challa in their ritual combat. Like I kind of wanted it to feel just a little bit more like that. Like I wanted to feel like the desperation on both
I
ends.
was thinking
And I
more like T'Challa and the Winter Soldier in Civil War. Like, even though it's kind of interrupted by a helicopter, the emotion was there, and it's just like, oh shit, he's about to take out the Winter Soldier right then and there.
Sure, and I feel like when it comes to like the choreography of it, I totally agree. I feel like the emotion, I feel like the closest one I can think of is Killmonger and T'Challa, just
Mm-hmm.
because of the stakes on both ends, and you understand both stakes. Like you understand T'Challa's place, and you understand Killmonger, and you can empathize with both. And I think that's very true with the situation with Shuri and Namor. Like at this point, you understand why they're both fighting,
Yeah.
and it makes sense. Like you can empathize with both of their positions, but I think that it just wasn't fully fleshed out in this scene.
Sure.
I feel like I just didn't feel the same magic that I think they could have expressed in this, because I know they've done it with other scenes that I think are similar. And again, I think Killmonger and T'Challa is a very similar place to kind of look at and compare, and so I
Mm-hmm.
do wish that they did a little bit more with it. It was good, and I liked what they did, but just more. That's all I wanted.
That's all I'm saying. Just a little bit more, but we got what we got. It wasn't bad. Just could have been better. But then from there we kind of see uh, the surrender. And it wasn't necessarily like a loss. It was more so a yield to peace, just so um, there was no more bloodshed because if things kept going, honestly, the Wakandans on that ship, they were outnumbered, and it could have been the end of those Wakandans right then and there.
Yeah, there's nothing Shuri could have done to save them. Nothing.
Right.
By that point, right? Because as this battle's is happening with Shuri and Namor, we basically see the Wakandans get demolished. Like when we started, the whole top of the ship was just covered, like blanketed with Wakandans.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of it, you're left with the Dora Milaje, and you were left with the Mountain Tribe. Like that's kind of it, and very finite numbers of it. They're like compressed into this one little section of like edge of the ship, and that's a lot of life that was lost. Like there's absolutely nothing Shuri could have done to save them, of like if this was not the outcome, you know. And a big turning point, because I think something that's important to look at when you look at characters that go in this direction, like Shuri, is like the redemption arc, right? And you know, I think with hers, I feel like they could have explored it more. Like I think they could have done a little bit more to build up her story in this film, because they did a great job, I think, of leading her into a place where you understand why she's making these rash decisions, why she's leading with anger and vengeance. But I don't think they gave us enough time in this point to feel the shift of redemption. I think they did an amazing job to close off her story in this movie, but I just feel like they were missing a little, like a step or two in between that space.
We were already 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes in, you know, like I think cutting it short is acceptable just because we're reaching like in-game numbers, you know. So like
what's 15 minutes? What's 15 minutes? And you know what, that's fair. That is totally fair. Like, let's keep in mind the tally of things that this film had to accomplish.
Sure.
I could not really fathom a storyline that I would have felt content with, and I think they gave me something I'm very content with. Like I'm very happy with what they gave us. So yeah, like I think your point is valid. You're like, Grace, they did good. Let them be.
Yeah. Just listen. They gave us all that they could, honestly. Though we theorized other things, which doesn't really matter in the aspect of this movie. They gave us the completion of a Chadwick Boseman story. They gave us the ascension of Shuri to the Black Panther, and they gave us a little bit more in terms of the strength of Wakanda and the continuation of Wakanda, with now M'Baku now becoming king and possibly the new Black Panther. So again, not again. Shout out to Kugler, though I may have questioned you a little earlier. You did everything you could and you did it right, you know. So as far as this movie is concerned, it's still an A+. It's not. It doesn't get brought down in my eyes. I think it was a great movie. Yeah, we have our little notes, but everybody on the internet's gonna have notes, and these are the CCU notes by Chill and Grace. So don't worry about us. Hear us, and Feige, hear us on the Adamantium talk like legit. But anyway, when it comes down to it, this movie, I think it ended on a good note. Though Namor and his people, it just seemed like Namora, she kind of questioned him as to why he felt the need to yield, but he kind of made it clear that it was on some. It was like, A, it was for peace, but B, they're the most powerful people on land, and if it comes down to them being in trouble, the only people they can really rely on are the Talokans, and it's really on them if they decide to help the Wakandans out or not. So though it was a yield, it was still kind of like a show of power. It's like, yeah, I'll yield, but shit, if the time comes, I may crush you with everybody else. So
it's you know something, I think that there's something really beautiful about what we saw in the battle scene, in that it's like the people of Wakanda aren't complete without like the leaders that they have, because they have some great leaders, you know, who care about their people. And I think it's vice versa. Like you saw that with the people of Talokan. Like for them, like Namor is everything, you know, and I think they have such, like, you don't see that in other nations, you know what I mean? Like, you see, and you can compare that to just like the glimpses you see of the CIA with like the US, you know, it's not that same thing. Like, the leaders aren't invested in the day-to-day lives really like the leaders of Wakanda and Talokan are. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, everything they do in these in this film is, you know, based on like the fear of losing what you love, and you see what happens when you do. It's I think the themes are really well encompassed in that. And with how kind of the story finalizes with Talokan, with Namor and Namora, I think Namor's questioning of his decision making, I think, is setting up the pace for maybe I don't know if I would say like a rebellion, but you also have a Tuma who's kind of like the general. Like, you would compare him a lot to Okoye, which we did in the last episode that when we broke down Black Panther. But I feel like it's maybe building up something like that, because there's
like
storyline where Tuma, a Tuma like kind of tries to usurp the throne and things, and so it's I think it's setting up something like that. But I mean, like, at this point, they're realizing like they do need each other, and that is kind of how like their introduction was. Obviously, like, the demands that Namor was asking for, I think, were just questionable. Like, you know, you want us to kill a kid, like, I get it, like, I agree we need to unite, but you want us to kill a kid, like, we can't do that. And that's exactly where the conflict began, and then it led into you killed our queen, and now it's just so much greater. But you're looking at the two greatest nations in the entire world, right? If those two nations could just make peace and be like, hey, I protect you, you protect me, like, they'd be unstoppable. Like, to me, it's kind of like watching House of the Dragon, you know, like, if everyone just played nice, the Targaryens and the dragons would be okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Like, the only thing that can destroy them is themselves. And so I do like how all of those themes are really well encompassed and kind of highlighted towards the end, but it's hard watching it sometimes, because you're just like, just make nice and everything will be okay.
Right. Did you want to dive more into the post credit, or like we kind of talked about it a bit? Like, did you have any other notes that you wanted to bring up?
No, I feel like we really fleshed it out. I think we talked on all of the things that I had for the end credit scene. I have some other notes here. I just want to make sure we talked about M'Baku.
While you're looking, I do want to address, like, with this talk of Namor and Namora, I just want to kind of talk to Feige just for one more second. Last point, Feige, okay? So when it comes down to it, can we get a little bit more, like, original with names here? Like, Namora, Gamora, we got two Ronins, you know, Guardians Ronin and Hawkeye Ronin. Can we, you know, is it possible we can get a little bit more original to separate, you know, even though Namora is different by a single letter? I'm sorry, I couldn't help but think of Gamora in hearing that name. I'm sorry.
See, I understand what you're saying, but unfortunately, that's the comics, man. It'd be like changing Peter Parker's name to Patricia. Or no, I guess that'd be a whole gender swap, which is fine. But it'd be like having Peter Parker and have the storyline be completely the way you know it to be, but his name is like Ben. You know?
Right.
And so I get it, because you're not wrong. It's kind of, again, it's like Game of Thrones. You got Rhaenys and Rhaenyra and 1,000 Aegons, which is what causes the war. And it's like, guys,
Jon Snow is Aegon.
Lord help me. I forgot. There's like 4 Aegons in just the span of what we've seen. Dang. And there's more. There is more. Like,
what was the name of the Child King? I'm sorry, people. We're now kind of talking about Game of Thrones, but what was the name of the Child King that was a Lannister?
Which one?
The first one. The brother.
The
older brother.
Oh, I know. Hold on. It's the same as one of Rhaenyra's children.
Right. When I heard that, like, later on, I was like, oh, he has like another one of his names in this series. You know.
They just
Joffrey.
Joffrey. See, this is okay. Honestly, the conversation you just had that you directed with Kevin Feige, you should actually be directing to what's his name, George R.R. Martin, because he created this world and he just reuse the names.
Yeah.
It's like a lot.
Yeah.
So that's where that's where that conversation should be directed. Kevin Feige's just copying and pasting the material he's got. Like, it makes sense. And unfortunately it is the case. You get 2 Ronins, you get Gamora and more, you know, so
we don't get Atlanteans, you know what I'm saying? We get a brand new name of people, so I mean he has the power to change names, apparently. That's all I'm saying.
I guess you're right. But he doesn't have the power to give people last names. So who knows? Maybe there's like a fine line between what he can and can't do.
True. Okay, well, I think, it doesn't do it because we're going to rank it real quick, okay? Let's see. Boom. All right, people. Let me refresh just so everything is solid. Am I logged in? Perfect. All right, so out of the 30 movies right now, Black Panther, they added to the bottom, but it's definitely making its way up. All right, so is it above 20?
What's 20 right now?
20 is Black Widow.
I would put it above 20. What follows?
After Black Widow?
Mm-hmm.
Age of Ultron.
Okay, what's after?
First Avenger, Captain America.
What's after?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Okay, so I would definitely say it's above Black Widow, and I think you said Age of Ultron follows.
Yeah.
I would say it's above those 2 for sure.
Okay.
How do you feel good about that?
Yes. So as of right now, I wouldn't put it in the bottom 10 because like if I can't say it's an A+ movie and then it's at the bottom 10, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just kind of grouping it. We're just getting the bottom 10 out of the way, okay? Because now instead of going up top 10, let's talk between 10 and 20. Right now, Wakanda Forever is at 20. But at number 10, we have first Iron Man. 11, we got Spider-Man Homecoming. 12, Marvel's Avengers. 13, Iron Man 2. 14, Spider-Man Far From Home. 15, The Winter Soldier. 16, Guardian Volume 2. 17, Iron Man 3. 18, Love and Thunder. 19, The First Doctor Strange.
Okay. So I'm gonna creep up the ladder just a little bit because I can only do one thing at a time.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay, so we had Doctor Strange on there, and what was the one right above Doctor Strange?
Love and Thunder.
Okay, so I would say for sure, let's creep it up on there. Let's put it above Love and Thunder, and we can kind of work our way and then compare one by one. So
Iron Man 3.
I love Iron Man 3.
It's good.
I don't know if I can break that window for it because. I don't know.
Wow.
How do you feel? I'm a little stuck here. I'm a little stuck.
Where is the first Black Panther? Okay, the first Black Panther is sitting comfortably at number 8. Okay. Where
it belongs, yes.
Okay. And did we say last week if it was better than the first?
It was definitely not better than the first.
Okay.
I think the first is just such a complete, cohesive piece that's like honestly masterful. Like I think overall it's rated one of the highest of like the individual movies, and I think it's rightfully so. And I feel like despite all the great things that we talked about for this film, I think that as like a solid project in the span of the MCU, I feel like it doesn't. It's debatable where it stands. So I think it's definitely going to lie between the 10 to 20 mark. And keep in mind, guys, honestly, above anything of number like 5 from the bottom, all of these are A. So you guys can get mad for nothing, you know?
I'm trying to think like impact, right? And
see, that's what I fall into, honestly. And I think that we've revisited the show and we've kind of re-cleansed it in a place where I think we're both feeling really solid about our rankings. And we've modified some of our rankings for the movie list, but we haven't really flushed it out a lot. But if Iron Man 3 is the one that's challenging Black Panther 2, I don't know. A piece of me really doesn't want to let it pass. Like there's things about Iron Man 3 that I love so much.
Mm-hmm.
And parts of it is that it really does strip Tony Stark to just the man.
Okay.
You know, like not Iron Man, but Tony.
Let's
You know,
let's
because
let's take Iron Man out of the equation then, okay? Because the next one up is Volume 2. And I know how you feel about Guardians. So would Wakanda
in which
Forever.
case Black Panther's not moving.
Wow. Okay.
I compromised as much as I could for volume 2. This is where it ends.
You know what? I'm not mad at that because above Volume 2, I'm sorry. I love this movie, but the next one in line is Winter Soldier, and I can go on, and I've gone on for days about where this movie lands, you know? So
Then we are in a standstill. This is where we stop.
so as of right now, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it lands at 18, and it's according to Grace, which I agree to all of her points, it's not going above Iron Man 3, which Iron Man 3 came out when? Right after the first Avengers. When did the first Avengers come out?
No, you're right. It is the first film, I believe, that. Yeah, okay, so Iron Man 3 is the first film after the Avengers, right?
Mhm.
And so the thing about this film, it's like the timing, it's kind of how it stood the test of time and how it's impacted
Mhm.
the overall MCU. And this is why I feel like it's such it's placed where it is in the ranking. When you follow something that at the time was like a marvel, like pun intended,
Mhm.
um, to see the Avengers assemble for the very first time as a team, something that like this kind of a combination had never happened like to this degree. Like this is like when Jimmy Neutron met Timmy Turner, you know what I'm saying? But like 1,000 times greater.
Okay.
And we've never seen it. Obviously now we've seen this like in infinitely grander ways, but this is the first film to follow, and I think that the approach that they took was something that speaks a lot to their character development. And that, you know, I think if these were different people behind Marvel at that time, they would have tried to make it even more extravagant and flashy to try to let it follow after the Avengers. But instead what they did, and honestly, if you, yeah, pun intended, that they did go flashy, because at the very end there was a fireworks show. But they took this into a very introspective approach. Like I said, they stripped Iron Man into just Tony Stark. They put him in literally God knows like nowhere, right? And they put him in this position, and he still had to save the day. And on top of that, he was dealing with anxiety and PTSD. And I feel like they just humanized him so much that I think it made us fall in love with Tony that much more, if possible, because he was already like, he's Iron Man,
Let
you
me
know?
let me ask you, if we got a movie from the beginning, there the Shuri, she found the formula for the heart-shaped herb, and she was the Black Panther the entire movie. Do you think it would be a totally different story? Because we didn't get Black Panther until the last 15 minutes.
You know, I don't think that would have changed it for me. Like I think I liked what they did, because I feel like if they would have handed the mantle at any earlier point in the film, I think, not that I would have said it wasn't earned. I just think it would have been too quick as a fan. You know what I mean? Like I think the pacing that they took in terms of how long it did take for there to be a Black Panther on the screen, I feel like was the respect that that mantle deserved, not just within the scope of, you know, the comics and Marvel and the MCU, but I think in the scope of, you know, that we're shifting mantles because unfortunately we had like a passing
Mm-hmm.
happen in real life, you know. And so I think that that decision was perfect. I think if they would have did the opposite and given us a Black Panther, you know, more within like the first quarter of the film versus the last quarter,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been upsetting. So I think they made a really smart decision in the way that they did that. So I don't think that changes. I don't think that would have made the ranking higher for me.
But I think that's what's keeping me kind of good with keeping it at 18, just because though we know Shuri from the first movie, like I mentioned last week, she unfortunately isn't isn't Chadwick. You know, he had a presence to where it brought a little bit more emotion for me, and just even in the style of, like, we went on for a long time last week talking about the style of just like choreographed fight scenes, you know, to where this, of course, was a little bit more CG between her, and Namor, and of course Namor was all CG, you know. So I didn't feel what I felt with seeing everything else, you know. So I think this can sit at 18 just because, for me, I think again, Shuri is still kind of new, and it's kind of hard to say, even though, like, the only, let's say, characters that we have that are quote unquote new above that at the time were like Ant-Man in his solo film, and then Shang-Chi in his solo film, you know. Those were kind of like newer characters that weren't as big as like an Iron Man, Captain America, or Thor, or anything like that, and they just happened to be successful, to where now we're getting two new characters. I think we got a little bit more Namor than the actual Black Panther. So I think, as far as story, it goes at 18 above everything else on this list. But as far as characters, and just to kind of go back to Iron Man 3, this was like an important arc to Tony. You know, this was uh, before his vision from Ultron and creating Ultron. This is like right after New York and him battling the quote unquote demons of the PTSD and having anxiety attacks. You know, this was, though we may have not have thought about it initially when watching the movie years ago, we've kind of analyzed it to the point to where this is a big moment for Tony, and this could be a point to where Tony changed. Like, he destroyed all of his suits, and he got the actor arc reactor out of his chest. You know, so a lot happened in the movie to where I don't think Wakanda Forever could match that.
I agree, and I'm just gonna touch on like kind of the I guess the roof that's holding it, which is Iron Man 3. And I think it's like I said, like the film to be before this was the Avengers, which was a Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
and then this film, I feel like it just speaks so much to what the writers and the directors and like the filmmakers at the time really valued, which is character development, because they went from this massive thing of New York and Thor and, you know, the Hulk and all of that, and then brought it down to, we're just looking at Tony like building his suit out of scraps, you know, things like that. And I think adding that with like real things like him struggling with his PTSD and anxiety, I feel like it's just so raw and so real, but it doesn't strip him of all of the things that we still associate with Iron Man, like the power, the strength. And I think that's why that film is just, it's solid where it is. And I can't, like I said, like you said, I can't put Black Panther above it. Um, I
It
feel,
had its moments. Like, there was a moment where we thought Pepper Potts died. Like, it tugged on my heartstrings right then and there until she, like,
dude,
rose from the ashes, the literal ashes. You know what I'm saying?
no, when he says, "Oh, that scene," I swear, if I could pull up that scene right now and start bawling, because Robert Downey Jr.'s like acting in that scene was amazing. You know, like like I can vaguely remember the dialogue of just like, I'll catch you," and then he doesn't. Heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
That film stays where it's at, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to Black Panther, and I think the pieces of it that keep me from ranking it higher. And I really don't fault this to like the creators, just because they had such a hard task to do, and I'm honestly so surprised that they did it this well. Gladly surprised, right? But is I feel, and it's kind of going back to that piece that I said, I feel like maybe they could have fleshed out Shuri's redemption arc just a little bit more, especially being that she's now carrying a mantle of like a primary character. Like, she's no longer just the little sister of T'Challa. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like she's carrying the name at this point. And I feel like she deserved just a little bit more time for the redemption arc, because I do think that they did a great job of getting you to understand how she landed in that dark place.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they didn't take enough time to pull her out. I feel like they did a beautiful job in that final scene of seeing her find healing. But I think they just needed a little bit more time for us to see that redemption. And I think that would have just given her a little bit more build to make this story complete. Because ultimately, like, we don't have T'Challa. Ramonda, like, she's passed,
mm-hmm.
right? Everything else is secondary character. Like, this was Shuri's film to some degree, you know? I think overall, like, this is Wakanda's film, you know? But if you were going to, you know, call out one character, this was supposed to be Shuri. And so I feel like it should have just given a little bit more attention when it came to the redemption arc before getting into that place of healing, because I loved that scene. I feel like that would have pulled it maybe a little bit more for me. Would it still combat Iron Man 3? I still don't think so. But it would have just been a little higher for me. So I really think that this film deserves its place at number 18. It did so much well. And I think the places that it fell short, I mean, it could have been for a plethora of reasons. Sure. Because keep in mind, like we talked about this last time, the amount of times that this production was halted and started again was enormous. Like, honestly, I questioned whether we were going to get this film, just knowing from what was going on in the back end. And so I don't fault it too much, and I feel like they will kind of give us more. And I think the way that they left Shuri was beautiful. You didn't need words. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You just, like, I think that Letitia Wright did such a great job of just evoking all that needed to be, like, the pain to, like, the surrender to, like, the relief, just in a scene of her being glistened by, like, sun and watching, like, her mourning, like, garments, like, burn. You know what I mean? So overall, solid win for the MCU.
So let's say randomly, this is off topic, before we kind of close out, because I'm going to bring us back to our oh, no, not there. Sorry, y'all. But say when it comes down to, say she burned with her mom her robes, do you think she would have had another pair of robes for her mom? Like, like, I feel like if anything, it's a silly question, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, I think she's burning the same robes for two people, you know? So I don't know. I didn't really know how to read it. Was it beautiful? Yes, but now it's just like, in the wind that she feels, is she feeling both mom and bro, or is she just feeling her bro, you know? And I think there was like a split second to where there is like a Chadwick montage in that moment, right?
Yeah, like this is very synergistic to, like, a Chadwick montage, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, I love how there was literally no sound. Like, you just heard, I think, the wind, and it was so perfect because you didn't need anything else, you know?
Yeah.
You see, I think the expression, like, evoked on her face is so perfect and beautiful for what it was trying to serve. And when you accompany that with this montage of Chadwick Boseman, I feel like it really closes off this film and puts, like, just the final touch on what I think was already a really great tribute. And so I don't think the montage was meant for Chadwick, and I think this moment was meant for Chadwick. But, like, in terms of the world of the MCU, you can assume that this is meant for both of them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I know. Silly me. Silly chill, but I was just
saying that.
But that was just something I kind of just wanted to close on, and I think I left the theater. I got up out of my seat. I think I heard a boo at the very end because there wasn't a second post credit. Like, first off, after Shang-Chi and having this conversation with Grace, she was like, wait, you didn't stay for the post? So this time, I was like, every movie since Shang-Chi, I'm staying till the very end, and I'm just like, oh, wow. It's just Marvel Studios. Like, that's it. You know, it's not even like a Black Panther Shuri will return, because that's how they normally, like, end some of those movies. It was just like, later.
That's it. Wait,
Right.
it didn't give us the Black Panther will return. I
No.
think it did.
I don't remember seeing that. I think it just I saw credits and then like the Marvel logo just pop up and then the screen went off.
Hold on. I'm so certain like there was like that only because I was sitting next to someone who's also a nerd, and while like the credits were rolling, they were searching to see if there was anything else, and they said hold on. Yeah, and they said, "Oh, the only thing we're waiting on is going to say the Black Panther will return," and I just confirmed that is the case. So there was the Black Panther will
Okay.
indeed return. That's it is. The Black Panther will indeed return. That was the end thing, and I think that this is cool because we talked about it. Like, there's potentially three active
A
Black
Black Panther.
Panthers. Yeah, a Black Panther. Which one will continue the mantle for the rest of the you know, future of the MCU?
Mm-hmm.
It's TBD, and I like that they left it that way. Because we have three prospective Black Panthers that could be who they're referring to with that end credit scene, and we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be Shuri M'Baku, if it's going to be T'Challa Jr. You know, so I like that. That's what they ended with.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. Did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. We did. Oh wow! Like this was such a monumental like episode for us. I love this. This is great.
It was a good show, but let's say this movie it gave like we just gave y'all 4 hours without even thinking of it. Like we did 2 hours last week and then 2 hours today, but yet with everything that we talked about, it's just kind of wild that it's sitting at 18. I'm just kind of pointing that out, and I'm not mad at the ranking, but that's I don't know. I
But you know
don't.
something? I feel like it speaks to how great this film was to close off the first phase of the saga. You know what I mean? Because that I think it speaks a lot to that. And
Yeah.
also, I think something that's reminiscent of it is the fact that we had so many side like panels right now
Clips
of
coming soon.
things that are connected to what we just saw in Wakanda Forever, but that connect to the greater universe, you know? So I think that, I mean, like, honestly, in this entire, like, episode of us just discussing Wakanda Forever, we talked about almost every film. You know what I mean? We
Mm-hmm.
talked about, you know, the first Avenger. We talked about the Avenger. We talked about all of these films
Mm-hmm.
that have happened over like a decade and a half. And it's all anchored by this topic of, you know, Wakanda Forever. And I think that's really representative of how well this movie did in serving as like a tribute to, you know, our friend Chadwick Boseman,
Mm-hmm.
but also as a anchor for the next phase to come and how this still continues, you know? And so I think that I know you're like, wow, like we spent 4 hours on this one film, but it's only at 18. But, you know, I think, like I said, I think, you know, we talked about why I think 18 is a great placement,
Sure.
but I feel like it just speaks to that. It deserves to have closed off like this phase. I think it deserves that spot, rightfully so.
Definitely. Okay. Well, this has been episode 60 of the Comic Cinematic Universe. And next week, we are talking about Guardians. When does Guardians come out? On Wednesday?
Guardians comes out.
Oh, it's not even going to be next week because we're taking next week off, y'all. We'll be off.
The holidays.
Happy Thanksgiving, y'all.
So we will be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy next time that you see us, which is basically my Christmas. I'm so excited. Get ready. We're gonna talk for like 2 hours on just like a half hour short.
Sure.
Just watch.
And yeah, I'm for it. I think I want to end it on a theory that I'm gonna leave y'all to chat about. Okay, so I think I want to pose the question: will we ever find out who the blue person is in Miss Marvel? We thought it was going to be the blue people of the ocean. Apparently not. Maybe. We don't know. Who do you think the blue person is that had the bangle of Miss Marvel? We will find out on one episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe someday, one day. And yeah, until then, You all have a great Thanksgiving. Grace, you have a great Thanksgiving. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All
Well,
right. Well, thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving,
thank you.
guys. This was Chill and Grace with the Comic Cinematic
Look at
Universe.
you. I love this. Keep
Very
going.
proud.
All right, we're out. Later,
I like
guys.
to throw it when you don't know it's coming.
Yep. All right,
Bye, guys.
guys. See you.